little footsteps, we began to climb.
Near or far we
Side by side, from our halls we walked their aisles.
achievements and awards now implies. Join us and we'll show you the greatness of SSU. Summer State University, soaring high with excellence, seat of innovation, we'll build and serve the nation. Summer State University, it's the best for you and me, your future and dream. So come on to Summer State University. So come on to Summer State University. From our humble beginnings, we began to shine.
From taking little footsteps, we began to climb.
Near or far, we have reached across summer.
From Catbalogan, Mercedes, Paranas and Pasay. From our halls we walked their aisles.
Achievements and awards now implies. Join us and we'll show you the greatness of SSU. Summer State University. We'll build and serve the nation. Summer State University. Summer State University. So call to Summer State University. When I am down and all my soul so weary,
When troubles come and my heart burden be,
and I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas.
I am strong
When I am on your shoulders, you raise me up to more than I can be. There is no life without its hunger.
each restless heart beats softly perfectly.
But when you come and I am filled with wonder, sometimes I think I glimpse eternity. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas.
I am strong
When I am on your shoulders, you raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas.
I am strong
When I am on your shoulders, you raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up to more than I can be.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Ang sarap ng matawag ko'y kung kailan nagmimingin. Ang ituwing na araw niya kailan pa may makikinig. Lupan ang araw na walang pag-ikot sinta. Kulalawit sa piling mo. Sabihin mo ang ligaya ng pag-ngayong akin. Ang mga kain na
Once again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's fiery hot here in Catbalogan City, and time check, it's already 2:08 in the afternoon, but we are still up and alive as we start our webinar this afternoon. Maupay po nga kulo pa aton nga tanan. I am so glad to see you once again, ladies and gentlemen, as I welcome you all to the orientation on RA 8049 Anti-Hazing Law and RA 10627 Anti-Bullying Act. Ignorantia juris non excusat. We know that no man is above the law. I'm really sorry for the delay because we got disconnected. Once again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are still up and alive as we start our webinar this afternoon. Once again, maupay nga aga haaton nga tanan. I'm so glad to see you once again, ladies and gentlemen, as I welcome you all to the orientation on RA 8049 Anti-Hazing Law and RA 10627 Anti-Bullying Act. Ignorantia juris non excusat. We know that no man is above the law and no man is below it. This makes this webinar we have today an essential because we are going to tap on the things that give us freedom and not the other way around, the law. So let's make the most of our time, especially that today we are graced by attorney Russell Espernitas as our resource speaker. And to really make the most of your webinar experience, we would ask you to please interact with us by sending us your thoughts in our Zoom chat box and in our comment section in Facebook. You may also want to greet each other or maybe you shout out kung anong colleges na you belong to. Let's be loud, everyone here in Zoom and even in the social media because we are live in Facebook at this very moment. Good afternoon, netizens! Magingay tayo online, SSU students.
Yes,
Well, let's do
afternoon.
a housekeeping as we start today's event. Please kindly ensure that the protocols for this event are followed. Rule 1. Please turn off your microphone if not needed. 2. Your name in Zoom shall appear coded by your honorific name dash affiliation. For example, Miss Jessa dash SSU. Rule number 3. For our FB Live participants, you may share, tag, or mention your friends to join the FB Live stream, but please refrain from posting unnecessary comments in the comments section. And for our Zoom participants, questions and clarifications will be entertained after the talk. By then, you may turn on your camera and microphone, or you may use our chat box. The moderator will cue if you are already recognized. Rule 5, please stay until the end of the webinar. Wag niyo po kaming iwan. And Rule 6, to make sure to fill out the attendance and evaluation correctly and answer the post-test to secure your certificate of participation. And this one, just a reminder po sa lahat ng ating mga estudyante sa Summer State University. On behalf of those who will not be able to join the live stream of this webinar, the attendance and the evaluation link will be available until the end of July 2021. Law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice and protecting our people. And today, Summer State University, through the Student Welfare and Development Services, will help you understand and internalize the need to know. Hazing and bullying are two heavy violations of human rights. Thus, we are here to throw away ignorance and to create a platform for dialogue regarding these matters. A very good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the orientation on the Anti-Hazing Law and the Anti-Bullying Act. And to jumpstart the afternoon session, wag na po nating patagalin pa. Please give me the honor of presenting our resource speaker this afternoon. Our speaker is an attorney at law currently working in the BPB Law Offices, Cebu City. At the same time, he works as an instructor in the University of Southern Philippines Foundation College of Law. Adding up to his busy schedule is being a legal consultant in the office of board member Kerry Shimura in Cebu City. He is a member of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines Cebu City chapter, member of the Honor Society of Phi Kappa Phi, and a certified data protection officer ACE Level 1, hailed by the National Privacy Commission. Despite the long list of roles he plays, what he enjoys the most is sharing his passion to people. And that is the reason he is here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so honored to have him with us this afternoon. Let us all welcome and give the virtual floor to our resource speaker, attorney Russell S. Bernites.
It's great to see you again, Miss Jessa. Good afternoon, maayong hapon. Magandang hapon, maupay nga kulupay yung atanan. Again, thank you SSU, especially the Student Welfare and Development Services Office for this privilege. Indeed, Ms. Jessa correctly said earlier that ignorance of the law excuses no one from compliance thereof. So it's best that we discuss some of the laws which are very relevant to the university, especially to the students. So let's start with a discussion about the anti-hazing law. So I'll be sharing my screen. There. Okay, the anti-hazing law. It's the Republic Act number 8049, which was approved in 1995. So it's entitled an act regulating hazing and other forms of initiation rights in fraternities, sororities, and other organizations, and providing penalties therefore. Actually, this is a response by Congress on the death of Leonardo Lenny Villa. He was a student of the Ateneo University College of Law who died during the initiation rites of a fraternity sometime in 1991. So as a response, Congress enacted Republic Act number 8049, which was passed into law in 1995. Despite the enactment of the law, still there were violations that were committed even after. So in 2018, during the time of President Duterte, Republic Act number 11053 was enacted and passed into law, amending the former Republic Act number 8049. So at present, the law which is effective, which is referred to as Anti-Hazing Act of 2018, is Republic Act number 11053. So for purposes of our discussion this afternoon, we will be referring to Republic Act number 11053. So what is hazing? As defined under Section 2, Paragraph A of Republic Act number 11053, hazing refers to any act that results in, take note of these, physical or psychological suffering, harm, or injury inflicted upon a recruit, a neophyte, an applicant, or member as part of an initiation rite or practice, made as a prerequisite for admission or a requirement for continuing membership. Now, take note, hazing is any physical or psychological suffering, and it is inflicted on a recruit, a neophyte, an applicant, or a member as a requirement to admission or continuing membership in a number one, fraternity, sorority, or organization. And what are these acts? According to the law, it is including but not limited to number one, paddling, whipping, beating, branding, forced calisthenics, exposure to weather, forced consumption of any food, liquor, beverage, drug, or other substance, or any other brutal treatment or forced physical activity, which is likely to adversely affect the physical and psychological health of such recruit, neophyte, applicant, or member. The same definition continues with that this will include any activity intentionally made or otherwise by one person alone or acting with others that tends to humiliate, take note of this, humiliate or embarrass, degrade, abuse, or endanger by requiring a recruit, neophyte, applicant, or member to do menial, silly, or foolish tasks. So take note of the definition of hazing. Then what is an initiation rite? Initiation rites as defined under Section 2, Paragraph B of RA 11053 refer to ceremonies, practices, rituals, or other acts, whether formal or informal, that a person must perform or take part in order to be accepted into a fraternity, a sorority, or an organization as a full-fledged member. So it includes ceremonies, practices, rituals, and other acts in all stages of membership in a fraternity, sorority, or organization. So what is an organization? As defined under Section 2, Paragraph C of the law, it refers to an organized body of people, which includes, but it is not limited to, any club, association, group, fraternity, and sorority. And included in the definition of an organization is the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the PNP or the Philippine National Police, the Philippine Military Academy, and the Philippine National Police Academy, and other similar uniform service learning institutions. And by schools, under Section 2D, it refers to colleges, universities, and other educational institutions. So SSU falls under universities as defined in Section 2, Paragraph D of the law. So that's it. You already know what is hazing, what are the acts, what are the covered institutions. Section 3 of the law prohibits hazing. So all forms of hazing shall be prohibited in fraternities, sororities, and organizations in schools, including citizens military training and citizens army training. So hazing is prohibited also in the NSTP or the CWTS, or it was referred to before as ROTC. This prohibition shall likewise apply to all other fraternities, sororities, and organizations that are not school-based, such as community-based and other similar fraternities, sororities, and organizations. Republic Act number 11053 actually expanded the coverage of the law, whereas before it referred to school-based organizations, fraternities, and sororities. Now it expands to fraternities, sororities, and other forms of organizations which are not limited to school. Now it includes community-based organizations. Here, all forms of hazing shall be prohibited. However, there is an exception, provided that the physical, mental, and practices to determine and enhance the physical, mental, and psychological fitness of prospective regular members of the AFP and the PNP as approved by the Secretary of National Defense and the National Police Commission, duly recommended by the Chief of Staff of the AFP and the Director General of the PNP, shall not be considered as hazing for purposes of this Act. Remember that part of the covered institution are the AFP, the PMA, the PNPA, but there is a qualification under the prohibition on Section 3 of the law that those physical, mental, and psychological fitness exams to enter into those institutions are not considered as hazing. Provided further that the exemption provided herein shall likewise apply to similar procedures and practices approved by the respective heads of other uniformed learning institutions. But since SSU is not a uniformed learning institution, then the exception will not apply. Now let's go to regulation of school-based initiation rights. Organizations are not prohibited to conduct an initiation right, any initiation right, provided that the initiation right, the activities in that initiation right does not fall under the definition of hazing. So under Section 4, only initiation rights or practices that do not constitute hazing shall be allowed. Okay? If it is not constitutive of hazing, that is allowed, even if it is an initiation right, provided that you, members of the organizations, especially the leaders of the organizations, must comply with the following requirements. First, there must be a written application to conduct initiation rights that should be made to the proper school authorities not later than 7 days prior to the scheduled initiation date. Second, the written application shall indicate the place and date of the initiation rights and the names of the recruits, neophytes, or applicants to be initiated and the manner by which they will conduct the initiation rites. So they must inform the school authorities of the manner of the initiation rites. Third, the initiation rites shall not last more than 3 days. So the maximum days for the initiation rites should be 3 days. It should not exceed 3 days. Another requirement, the application shall contain the names of the incumbent officers of the fraternity, sorority, or organization, and any person or persons who will take charge in the conduct of the initiation rites. Fifth, the application shall be under oath, meaning it should be notarized, with the declaration that it has been posted in the official school bulletin board, the bulletin board of the office of the fraternity, sorority, or organization, and 2 other conspicuous places in the school or in the premises of the organization. This is to ensure that all persons are notified of the intended conduct of the initiation rites. Another requirement, the application shall be posted from the time of submission of the written notice to the school authorities or head of organization and shall only be removed from its posting 3 days after the conduct of the initiation rites. So these requirements, these 6 requirements must be complied with by the organization who will or that will conduct an initiation rite. So on the part of the school, this must also be observed. Okay? The guidelines, the school is mandated by the law to make an appropriate guideline within 60 days. So I presume that the school is already compliant with this because even before the amendment of RA 8049, I believe that the school has a guideline on approval of activities of different organizations within the university. Under the same provision, the appropriate school authority shall have the obligation to disapprove. Take note, obligation. And the law used the word shall, meaning it is mandatory. The school authority shall have the obligation to disapprove the application to conduct initiation rites that do not conform with any of the requirements of this section. So you refer to the 6 requirements under section 4. Then under the same section 4, school officials shall have the authority to impose, after due notice and summary hearing, disciplinary sanctions in accordance with the school's guidelines and regulations on the matter, which shall include but shall not be limited to reprimand, suspension, exclusion, or even expulsion to the head and all other officers of the fraternity, sorority, and organization which conducts an initiation without first securing the necessary approval of the school as required under this section. So take note that if you are an officer of the organization and you failed to inform the school and comply with the requirements as stated in the law, the school can impose sanctions. The school authorities can impose sanctions, such as but not limited to reprimand, suspension, exclusion, and worse, expulsion from the university. In case the written application for the conduct of initiation rites contains false or inaccurate information, still the same appropriate disciplinary sanctions in accordance with the school's guidelines and regulations on the matter, ranging from reprimand to expulsion, shall be imposed. After, again, with consideration of due process, because the law requires that the sanction shall be given only after due notice and summary hearing for the purpose of compliance with due process of law. All right, let's go to section 5, monitoring of initiation rights. But this presupposes that there is an initiation right, and that initiation right does not include any acts which constitute hazing, and the organization, the fraternity, or the sorority complied with the requirements set forth under section 4. What is the obligation or duty of the school? Under section 5 of RA 11053, the head of the school or an authorized representative must assign at least 2 representatives of the school to be present during the initiation. So the law requires at least a minimum of at least 2. It should not be less than 2. It can be more than 2, but should never be less than 2 representatives, because the law requires that the head of the school should assign at least 2 representatives. And what is the duty of those representatives? It is the duty of the school representatives to see to it that no hazing is conducted. Again, you go back to the definition of hazing. So they have to make sure that there is no hazing that is conducted during the initiation rites, and they have to document the entire proceedings. Thereafter, said representatives who were present during the initiation shall make a report of the initiation rites to the appropriate officials of the school regarding the conduct of the said initiation, provided there is a qualification. If hazing is still committed, despite the presence of those 2 representatives, hazing is still committed despite their presence, no liability shall attach to them, referring to the 2 representatives, unless it is proven that they failed to perform an overt act to prevent or stop the commission thereof. Because the primary purpose of assigning 2 representatives is for them to make sure and oversee that during the initiation rite, there is no hazing. So if they failed to perform an act to prevent or stop the commission of hazing, then those two representatives will also be liable under the law. So it's very important. The function of those representatives is very important. They have to make sure and ensure that no hazing is committed. And under Section 6, there is a requirement by the law for all the fraternities, sororities, and other organizations within the school and even outside, because the definition expands to those community-based organizations. But for the purpose of our discussion, let's focus on school-based organizations. So all fraternities, sororities, and other organizations within the university are required to register. All existing fraternities, sororities, and other organizations otherwise not created or organized by the school but has existing members who are students or plans to recruit students to be its members shall be required to register with the proper school authorities before it conducts activities, whether on or off campus, including recruitment of members. Take note, all existing are still required to register. How about those newly established organizations? A newly established fraternity, sorority, or organization in a school shall immediately register with proper school authorities during the semester or trimester in which it was established or organized, provided that the new fraternity, sorority, or organization has complied with the requirements prescribed by the school in establishing a fraternity, sorority, or organization. So you refer to your student manual or the school manual on what are the requirements for the creation of an organization. And once you have complied and then you have already established your organization, you are required under Section 6 to register with the proper school office within the university. Okay? And then upon registration, all fraternities, sororities, or organizations shall submit a comprehensive list of members so that the school authorities would also know who are the members. And you should update that not later than 30 days from the start of every semester or trimester, depending on the academic calendar of the school. Take note here, another power that was granted to the school authority. The school official shall have the authority to impose, after, again, in observance of due process, after due notice and summary hearings, disciplinary penalties in accordance with the school's guidelines and regulations on the matter, including suspension to the head and other officers of the fraternity, sorority, or organization who fail to register or update the roster of members as required under this section. And failure to comply with any of the requirements in this section shall result in the cancellation of the registration of the fraternity, sorority, or organization. So this requirement of registration should be observed strictly. Otherwise, the school authorities can impose sanctions on the officers of the organization, and it could even lead to the cancellation of the registration of that organization. Section 7 of RA 11053 requires that a faculty advisor be schools shall require all fraternities, sororities, or organizations as a condition to the grant of accreditation or registration to submit the name or names of their respective faculty advisor. So the organization, the fraternity, the sorority, or the organization is required as a prerequisite to have a faculty advisor. And that faculty advisor must expressly accept the nomination or the naming by that organization. The submission shall also include a written acceptance or consent on the part of the selected faculty advisor or advisors. There must be a consent or acceptance by that faculty advisor because being the faculty advisor also uh, imposes a huge responsibility on the part of that faculty advisor. Because under the second paragraph, the faculty advisor shall be responsible for monitoring the activities of the fraternity, sorority, or organization as established or registered. And if there are violations of the law committed by that organization, it is presumed, there is a presumption that the faculty advisor has knowledge and consented to the commission of any of the unlawful acts stated therein. Again, the purpose of the law in making it mandatory for that organization to have a faculty advisor is to ensure that no hazing will be conducted by that organization. Or if you are a faculty and you are invited to be the faculty advisor, you have to make sure that that organization is compliant with the law, and not only by the law, by the guidelines of the school, because you will be held responsible if there are violations of the anti-hazing law. So what are the role, or what is the role of educational institutions? This is emphasized by Section 8 of Republic Act number 11053. The responsibility of schools to exercise reasonable supervision in loco parentis over the conduct of its students require the diligence that prudent parents would employ in the same circumstances when discriminating and protecting their children. Diba? The schools, especially the teachers, are the second parents. So the school as the educational institution is mandated to protect the welfare of the students. So it shall be the duty of schools to take more proactive steps to protect its students from the dangers of participating in activities that involve hazing. So what is required by the law for the school? School shall implement an information dissemination campaign at the start of every semester or trimester to provide adequate information to students and parents or guardians regarding the consequences of conducting and participating in hazing. So I commend the SWDS and the university for conducting this activity because this itself proved that you are compliant with Section 8 of RA number 11053. This can be considered as an information dissemination campaign to inform the students, the faculty, as well as all other stakeholders, especially those who are joining us in this Zoom conference and listening to us or watching us via Facebook Live. An orientation program, the same Section 8 requires that an orientation program relating to membership in a fraternity, sorority, or organization shall also be conducted by schools at the start of every semester or trimester. And schools should encourage fraternities, sororities, and organizations to engage in undertakings that foster holistic personal growth and development and activities that contribute to solving relevant and pressing issues of society. So, the schools should also encourage the fraternities and the organizations to engage in fruitful activities which are useful not only for the studentry but also the community. Here, under Section 12, because Congress observed that one of the defenses which are raised by those who are accused of hazing is that the members, the neophytes who underwent hazing, consented. Diba? They knew that hazing will be part of the process, but they consented to it. They had knowledge and they consented to it. So there is waiver That's why Section 12 of RA number 11053 expressly declares that any waiver of consent is considered as null and void. Any form of approval, consent, or agreement, whether it be written or not, verbal, or of an express waiver of the right to object to the initiation right or proceeding, which consists of hazing made by a recruit, neophyte, or applicant prior to an initiation right that involves inflicting physical or psychological suffering, harm, or injury shall be void and without any binding effect on the parties. So the defense that the recruit, neophyte, or applicant consented to being subjected to hazing shall not be available to persons prosecuted under the, the amended anti-hazing law. Under Section 13, the responsible officials of the school, the uniformed learning institutions, the AFP, or the PNP may impose the appropriate administrative sanctions after due notice and summary hearing on the person or the persons charged. So aside from the criminal prosecution, the officials of the school or any of the uniformed learning institutions can also impose administrative sanctions on the violator. So for example, students, they can be dealt with by giving sanctions like reprimand or suspension or worse, expulsion on the part of the faculty who participated or any of the members of the organization who are also a faculty member. Then they may also be administratively held liable. So let's go to the penalties. Let's not be technical about this. I'll just share to you what are the penalties for purposes of information. The penalty of reclusion perpetua. Reclusion perpetua ranges from 20 years and 1 day to 40 years. And a fine of 3 million shall be imposed upon those who actually planned. Take note, if you are part of the official or officer of the organization and you actually planned or participated in the hazing, you are to be imprisoned 20 years and 1 day to 40 years, and you will be ordered to pay a fine of 3 million pesos if there is death, rape, sodomy, or mutilation as a result of the hazing. And then another penalty, reclusion perpetua, the same, 20 years and 1 day to 40 years, and a fine of 20 million, 2 million, 2 million only if, take note of the circumstances. Number one, all persons who actually planned or participated in the conduct of hazing. But this time, under the second paragraph, there is no death, there is no rape, there is no sodomy, there is no mutilation. But there is hazing. And if you participated, you planned, reclusion perpetua plus 2 million penalty, civil liability. Second, all officers of the fraternity, sorority, or organization who are actually present during the hazing. So if you are an officer of the fraternity, sorority, or the organization, and you were present during the hazing, the fact that there was hazing and you were present, that's your liability. The advisor of a fraternity, sorority, or organization who is present when the acts constituting the hazing were committed and failed to take action to prevent the same. So this refers to the faculty advisor that is nominated or named by the fraternity, sorority, or the organization. If you were there and despite knowledge that there is hazing, you failed to take action to prevent the hazing from occurring, then you are also held liable, reclusion perpetua, and then a fine of 2 million. And then all former officers and resident members of the or alumni of the fraternity, sorority, or organization who are also present during the hazing. So any other officers or alumni, even if you are an alumni of that fraternity, sorority, or organization, and you were present, then you are still liable. And If you are a member of the Philippine Bar, if you are a lawyer and you were present, you will also be automatically subjected to administrative proceeding. And if you are a professional under the PRC, the Professional Regulation Commission, you will also be automatically subjected to administrative proceedings before that office. Okay? Officers or members of a fraternity, sorority, or organization who knowingly cooperated in carrying out the hazing by inducing the victim to be present thereat. Still liable, reclusion perpetua, 2 million penalty. Members of the fraternity, sorority, or organization who are present during the hazing when they are intoxicated or under the influence of alcohol or illegal drugs. Even if you are just a member of that fraternity, sorority, or organization, you were present and you were drunk and you were taking illegal drugs. The same, reclusion perpetua and a fine of 2 million. Officers or members of a fraternity, sorority, or organization who knowingly cooperated. Okay, let's go to the third. The penalty of reclusion temporal. This is the third penalty, reclusion temporal, in its maximum period and a fine of 1 million shall be imposed upon all persons who are present in the conduct of the hazing. So the mere presence in the place where the hazing was conducted, you can be held liable for reclusion temporal. And the fine here is 1 million. Here, the penalty of prison correctional in its minimum period. Correctional is 6 months and 1 day to 6 years. Shall be imposed upon any person who shall intimidate, threaten, force, or employ or administer any form of vexation against another person for the purpose of recruitment. So if ever you are a member of that organization and you use intimidation, threat, force, or you vexate another person for the purpose of recruiting or letting him join your organization, you can be held liable. The persistent and repeated proposal or invitation made to a person who had twice refused to participate or join the proposed fraternity, sorority, or organization shall be a prima facie evidence of vexation for purposes of this section. So if there are members of any organization who would badger you to join their organization and you have refused, according to the law, there is a presumption of vexation for the purpose of this penalty. If you have refused for at least twice and still that person is insistent on inviting you to be a member of that organization, that person can be held liable. A fine of 1 million shall be imposed on the school. This is liability on the part of the school. If the fraternity, sorority, or organization filed a written application to conduct an initiation which was subsequently approved by the school. Remember earlier, we have discussed that the school is mandated or obliged to disapprove any application if there are violations of the law. And despite the appearance of that violation, the school approved the application for an initiation right, then the school can be held liable. A fine of 1 million. Take note of this. Even if you are not a member, let's say you are not a member of the organization, you are not a faculty member, you are not the representative appointed by the school head, you are not the faculty advisor, But what if you are the owner of the place where the initiation was conducted or was held, and there was hazing? The owner or lessee of the place where hazing is conducted shall be liable as principal. So the same liability under A and B, katong reclusion perpetua and a fine of 3 million in case of death, etc., and 2 million if there is no death, etc. When such owner or lessee has actual knowledge of the hazing conducted therein. So if you are the owner or lessee of the place where the hazing was conducted, and you had knowledge that there was indeed hazing, and you failed to promptly report the same to the law enforcement authorities, if they can do so without peril to their person or family, then you are liable if you fail to report. But again, the law qualifies that you are to report only if you can do so without peril to their person or their family. If the hazing is held in the home of one of the officers or members of the fraternity, sorority, or organization, the parents shall be held liable as principal. So take note also of the parents of those who are officers or members of the fraternity, sorority, or any organization. If you allow that the hazing be conducted in your homes, you can be held liable as principal. And take note of the penalty, reclusion perpetua, and the fine of either 3 million or 2 million. The school authorities, including faculty members as well as barangay, municipal, or city officials, shall be liable as an accomplice and likewise be held administratively accountable for hazing conducted by the fraternity, sororities, other organizations if there is a showing that the school or the local government units allowed or consented to the conduct of hazing. But such officials fail to take any action to prevent the same from occurring or fail to promptly report to the law enforcement authorities if the same can be done without peril to their person or their family. Take note of this. This is very important. The mere presence of any person, even if such person is not a member of the fraternity, sorority, or organization, during the hazing is a prima facie evidence of participation, meaning this is a disputable presumption. If you are present and there was hazing, even if you are not a member, you are presumed to be a participant in the hazing. So there is a prima facie evidence of participation unless you are able to prove that you prevented the commission of the acts punishable or promptly reported the same to the law enforcement authorities, if you can do that without peril to your person or your family. So if you really do not have any participation in the hazing, of course, naturally, you would stop them or you would report to the authorities. So your failure to report or your failure to stop them makes it a prima facie, there is a prima facie evidence or presumption that you are a participant in the hazing. Okay, but just take note that there is also a qualification. As long as the failure to stop and the failure to report was caused by fear of any peril to the person or the family of that person who is present. The incumbent officers of the fraternity, sorority, or organization concerned shall be jointly liable with those members who actually participated in the hazing. So it's very important on the part of the officers, incumbent officers of the organization, that you are liable, jointly liable with those members who actually participated in the hazing, even if you were not a participant to the hazing, but you are an officer, you are still liable. So actually the law The reason why the law is written in such a way is for those officers of the fraternity, sorority, or organization to be accountable and to make sure that no hazing is to be conducted by their organization. These sections shall apply to the president, to the manager, to the director, or other responsible officer of businesses or corporations engaged in hazing as a requirement for employment. So if there are organizations which require certain forms of hazing as a requirement for employment, so the president, the manager, the director, or other responsible officer can be held accountable under the law. And then any conviction by final judgment shall be reflected on the scholastic record, personal or employment record of the person convicted, regardless of when the judgment of conviction has become final. Okay, so that's it. That's it for hazing. Those are the highlights of the amended law. Okay, those are the highlights of Republic Act number 11053. So take note, more liability or accountability is expected from the officers of the sorority, fraternity, or organization. And the school authorities are encouraged to prevent hazing, to do information dissemination drives or campaigns to educate not only the students, the members of the fraternities, including the parents and the members of the community. Because we have to discourage hazing as a form of requirement for entry or membership in any organization. So that's it for hazing. Okay, so what's next, ma'am? We should continue with bullying.
Yes, sir. I guess you should continue lang po muna.
Continue.
Opo.
Okay.
Thank you,
All right,
Attorney.
so we're done with anti-hazing. We now go to bullying. So for this topic, I need a few participants from our Zoom attendees.
Okay, sige po, Attorney. So,
My audience participation.
meron.
Okay.
Okay, so let's ask for our participants here, sir. Ilan yung kailangan niyo po?
I think I need mga 6. As I show the slides lang, I need some persons to tell me what you think about that person or character shown in the slides, and whether you think that person or character is a bully or not, and why do you say that he or she is a bully. Sige. Let's go to the profiling of a bully. Before we proceed, I'll show you some photos of persons or characters, and I need some participants to identify the person and tell us why you consider that person a bully. If not, then tell us also why. Okay. Can I see a raise of hand there? And who can identify and whether you consider these as bully or not? Sige, since si Miss Jessa lang yung kilala ko right now, can I ask Miss Jessa?
Maybe somebody's
Or-
raising his hand.
Si Sir Jeffrey. Sige, sir.
Jeffrey, could you unmute your microphone, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now.
Can you tell us who are these and why do you consider them or not consider them bully?
So, sir, I consider them sir, as bully because in the teleserye Pokemon, they are the one who are bagan permi sir ang balakid kan Nash sa mga activities. So, Walang kaluyod gihapon ni Rain away kay permi sira naingangadto ba sa ibang nga lugar tapos baga nasasakitan lot sira. Bansud sa na ba, sir? So
Okay,
bagan
okay.
pag-profile ko sa era sir, bully gud sira.
Sila. So you consider them as bully. Bully
Yes, sir.
because kontrabida sila sa life ni Nash and
Yes,
the other, yung sa mga bida.
yes, sir.
So your description of them as bully pertains to their acts, the certain acts nila towards Nash.
Yes, sir.
Diba? In the series Pokemon, whenever Nash would be capturing or find some Pokemon, they would try to get that instead, diba? Bagan giniilog nila ang Pokemon.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sige, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Second slide. May volunteer ba?
Attorney, magtawag na lang po yata tayo.
Sige,
Let's
sige,
call,
sige.
okay po, so let's call Miss Rubeline of SSU Co-Ed. Rubeline, could we hear you? Could we hear from you po? Could you unmute your microphone, please?
Sige, tell us who this is and why do you consider or not consider him a bully?
So, sino pa kaya dito? Jolia, Ruth, or anybody from the group?
Yes, ma'am.
Laurelie.
Sige,
Ayan, si Julie.
Julia.
What was the question, ma'am?
Here, do you see the screen? Please identify and then tell us if you consider him as a bully or not.
Yes, sir. Father, because he's the one who bullied the Harry. Iya
Harry.
po ang
Okay.
iya po ang sagapan mga plans na giniyo mo. Hindi da.
Okay. In what form? What form? Why do you say na bully siya? What does he do kay Harry and Harry's friends?
Ginagamit niyan iya power.
Okay, so you consider Draco Malfoy as a bully. And based on your statement, bully siya because he uses his powers against Harry and friends. Sige, how about this one? Okay, sige pa, Miss Julia.
Overpower niya, sir, and iya ginagamit niyan iya power para under ang ibang character.
Okay. Since there are two na parang ginhimo niya na body that
Yes.
would just
Opo.
follow what he orders. Okay. He imposes himself upon the others.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sige. Thank you, Miss Julia. How about this one? Do you consider this? Actually, this is not a person. Walmart. Do you consider that Walmart as a bully or not? Can we hear from... Sige lang. Ayaw kaawod, you just share whatever is in your mind. This for the purpose of encouraging discussion.
Okay, anybody from our Zoom group here? Laurelie, could you answer the question or could you tell if Walmart is a bully or not? Laurelie, please. Please.
Or we apply the local, siguro, kung ano yung mga big supermarkets like SM or Robinson Supermarket, ganun.
Jeffrey, are you raising your hand again?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you could say something.
Ma'am, sa akin pag-identify, ma'am, di rin na siya, ma'am, bully. So, usa ni siya na supermarket sa gawas na naghatag multi-sectors na mga investment sa ibang other countries. So, based sa akong research, Walmart is an American multinational retail corporation that operates a chain of hypermarkets. So, ang aton mga local markets, ma'am, didi, bagan incorporation gihapon siya sa gawas. So, in a way, nakakabulig siya.
Okay, so you do not consider Walmart as a bully because nakaka-bulig hiya iba.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sige. Let's go to the next. This one. Sige, Jeffrey again. Sige, Jeffrey. Do you
Sir,
consider him a bully or
yes,
not?
sir. I consider him a bully because he always make the story concern bagan kawawa ba si sinining ako ni Doraemon, sir? Ano sa nga nangalimot laksan ngaran basta kung ito ni siya, sir, na siya per may gudan na bubuli pero may siya kastigado pati sira
So
ito sir.
physical pa yun nga physical na pang-aaway and gibubuhat
Opo,
niya kan Nobita.
physical. Yes, sir.
Okay, sige. Next, this one. President Bush. Do you consider him as a bully or not?
Attorney, I guess let's have Ma'am Andrea.
Sige.
Ay, hindi. She's not in. Okay, she's not ready. Sige, let's call another one na lang po. How
Sige,
about
any
you,
idea lang.
Lorelai? Si Julia na lang. Julia? May first honor na kasi tayo si Jeffrey eh. So let's have Julia. Julia, could we hear again from you?
Ma'am, I have no idea po.
Okay, it's okay.
Kasi
Isa,
Ma'am Bambang na lang.
si Miss Bambam.
Ma'am Bam? Ayan.
Hello?
Hello, Ma'am Bam.
Bush, yes. Yes, he's a bully. I just can't tell why. Basta he's a bully.
Okay, maybe because of his policies towards the Middle East, diba? He is into the war before when he was president. So he can be considered as a bully by those countries because of the policy on offensive wars dahil sa terrorism. Okay. How about him?
Yes.
Si
Gordon
Chef,
Ramsay, bully again. It's me.
is he a bully?
Yes, he is. Always talks his contestants.
Yeah. So he imposes fear on the contestants, those who are in his kitchen. How about this one? Do you consider her a bully or not? Based on the jokes, the humor, can that be considered as a bullying or not?
Yes, Julia.
Sir, sometimes say danan iya jokes below the belt na. Amula po.
Okay, so you consider that bullying already if the verbal, even if intended as a joke or humor, pag below the belt na, that can be considered as a bullying already.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Kay nakakasakit yan feelings sa ibang tao nga gimi-make fun of niya.
Okay. Sige, thank you, Miss Julia. I think this will be the last. Do you still remember him? Or parang generation, kapanahunan namin na lang nakakilala? Ang naabutan nila, mga remake na. Daming sir.
Ay, the bully. Kapanuhunan ko din kasi siya. So I know him. So daming siya. He's a bully kasi he hits on the weaker people. Like he's being rich, he's being famous to bully others. May red card pa nga siyang ibigay. You'll be dead. That's a clear indication, sir.
Okay. Sige, thank you, Ms. Jessa. So based on that, profiling a bully, diba, we already have our conception of what a bully is and what bullying is. So based on our descriptions of those characters that were shown, bullying could be verbal, could be physical, could even be psychological. So let's proceed. At least we have a common understanding before we go deeper into what the law, how the law defines bullying. At least we have a common ground. We have a common understanding of what a bully, who a bully is, and what bullying is. I got this data from the Department of Education. According to the DepEd, from grade level 4 to 6, verbal abuse, there are at least 73.58% of victims of verbal abuse. There are 30.17% of victims of physical abuse. 26.74% of pupils from grade 4 to 6 are victims of verbal sexual abuse. 9.65% are victims of inappropriate touching. And then in high school, this data is in 2013. 78.36% are victims of verbal abuse in high school. 37.57% verbal abuse in physical abuse. 43.71% of high school students are victims of verbal sexual abuse, and 17.71% are victims of inappropriate touching. So now let's go to here. Before that na lang. There, from 2011 to 2013, there is a significant increase in the number of victims of bullying in different schools, according to the Department of Education. In 2011, 112, it rose to about 5,000 reported victims of bullying in 2013. So in response, Republic Act number 10627 or the Anti-Bullying Act of 2013 was enacted. This was enacted in September 12, 2013. So this law is entitled an act requiring all elementary and secondary schools to adopt policies to prevent and address the acts of bullying in their institution. But earlier we had our conceptions. I asked you about why you think that the person shown or the character shown is a bully. Let's look at the etymology of the word bully. Actually, it came from the Dutch word buel, which means lover. So a bully actually originally it refers to a friend, a sweetheart, or a family member. And then the definition later on evolved. And as defined by the law, bullying. Take note of this. What is bullying? It is a severe or repeated use of a Number one, written, verbal, electronic expression, physical act or gesture, or a combination of written, verbal, electronic expression, or physical act or gesture. And who commits it? It is committed by one student or more students against whom? Also by one student or more student. So who commits the act, severe or repeated use of a written, verbal, electronic expression, or physical act or gesture, or a combination thereof? One student or more student against or towards one student or more students. So, as defined by law, bullying does not include any act which is committed by the professors or the instructors. Although, if they commit certain acts, it could be written, verbal, electronic expression, physical act or gesture, or combination thereof, it does not mean that they are not liable. They may be held administratively liable based on the code of conduct of the university, including that of the civil service. Okay, so let's continue. By one student or more, towards one student or more, and causing, actually causing or placing that student in fear of physical harm, emotional harm, and damage to the property of that person who is the victim of bullying. Or, second effect, creating a hostile environment at school for the other student. Yeah? Or infringing on the rights of the other students at school, or materially and substantially disrupting the education process, or the orderly operation of a school. And what are the specific acts under the law? This is not limited to the following. First, any unwanted physical contact between the bully and the victim, like punching, pushing, shoving, kicking, slapping, tickling, headlocks, inflicting school pranks, teasing, fighting, and the use of available objects as weapons. So this is the usual that we see in the teleserye. Diba? The second act, any act that causes damage to a victim's psyche and or the emotional well-being. Any slanderous statement or accusation that causes the victim undue emotional distress, like directing foul language or profanity at the target. So this includes name calling, tormenting, and commenting negatively on the victim's physical looks, clothes, and body. So body shaming is included here. Another act, cyberbullying, or any bullying done through the use of technology or any electronic means. So remember, one student or more student against one or more student, and you use cyberbullying, you comment negatively against that person, causing negative effects on, including psychological effect on the student, which is subject of the post, that can be considered as bullying. Hmm? So what are the types of bullying contemplated by the law? So first is physical bullying. So it includes any physical contact that would hurt or injure a person, like hitting, kicking, punching, taking something that belongs to someone and destroying it would also be considered a type of physical bullying. So if you would get some things of your classmate, um, take it somewhere else or destroy it, that can be considered as physical bullying. Second type, verbal bullying. So this includes name calling, making offensive remarks or joking as mentioned by Miss, I think, Julia earlier, diba? The jokes of Bites Ganda sometimes are below the belt. So if you do such jokes and that joke is below the belt and that person who is subjected to that joke suffers psychological effect or torment, then that can be considered as bullying. Uh, Joking about a person's religion, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, or the way they look. Verbal bullying also includes making verbal threats of violence or aggression against someone's personal property. Another type of bullying, social bullying. So this includes spreading rumors or stories about someone, telling others about something that was told to you in private and excluding others from groups. So in short, chismis, when you subject a particular student to chismis and you would spread rumors against that person, causing that person to be excluded from the others or be the subject of um, fun, nga katawan na lahiya sa ibang estudyante, that can be considered as social bullying. Another type, gender-based bullying. This refers to any act that humiliates or excludes a person on the basis, the basis only is perceived or actual sexual orientation and gender identity. So you make fun of some student or person on the ground of gender identity or sexual orientation, that can be considered as bullying. Then this is very, very relevant because by reason of the advancement of technology, especially now that even classes are conducted online, cyber bullying is very rampant. This is done through the use of technology or any electronic means. The term shall include any conduct resulting to harassment, intimidation, or humiliation through the use of other forms of technology, such as but not limited to number one, texting, email, instant messaging, chatting, social media, online games, or other platforms. So your famous Facebook, your Twitter, your YouTube, Instagram, and now TikTok. Huh? Okay, so RA 10627 mandates the schools, the elementary and high schools, to adopt anti-bullying policies. So what are the acts which are prohibited? First, bullying, diba? Remember the definition of bullying? And it includes either physical, verbal, cyberbullying. So the policy should prohibit bullying at number one, the school grounds. Number two, the property immediately adjacent to the school grounds. So even if outside the school grounds, but to a property immediately adjacent to the school ground. Third, at school-sponsored or school-related activities, functions, or programs, whether on or off school grounds. So as long as it is a school-sponsored activity, then bullying should not be permitted. Fourth, at bus stop, school bus stop. Fifth, on school buses, rather vehicles owned, leased, or used by school. So there should be no bullying at the bus stop, at the school bus. And then it is also prohibited bullying through the use of technology or electronic device or other forms of media owned, leased, or used by the school. This is very significant, especially that now even elementary pupils are already owners of cell phones, di ba? iPad, and other similar devices. Third, it should also be prohibited bullying at a location, activity, function, or program that is not school related, and through the use of technology or an electronic device or other forms of media that is not owned, leased, or used by a school. Diba? This webinar can be an example of this one. Bullying should not be done even if it is done virtually. It is also prohibited the retaliation against person who reports bullying. So not necessarily the person who is the subject of bullying, but any concerned person or third person, another student, which or another student who reports bullying to the either school authorities or the law enforcement authorities. So what should be done by the school? And since this law applies to both public and private elementary and high schools, what should be done? So there are two kinds of programs as mandated by Section 3 of RA 10627. There are prevention programs and there are intervention programs. So before bullying is committed, so there should be prevention programs. So what are the examples of the activities there? There should be school-wide initiatives, there should be classroom-wide initiatives, there should be activities involving the parents, and there should be a monitoring of some of the vulnerable or those students which are vulnerable to be bullied. Okay, those are the prevention programs. So any activities like this one can be considered as prevention program. So you inform the students or the pupils. You inform also the parents. You inform the teachers so that they are aware of what bullying is and they are aware that bullying is not allowed. Okay, what if there is already bullying? So you go to the second program, the intervention program. So what are the activities to be conducted there? First, counseling. Second, life skills training and education. So the purpose there is to change the person, the bully. Also, the person subjected to bullying, you have to help that person. Since that person or that student has been subjected to trauma and the psychological effect to that student, which might affect how he or she would perceive her life and about the future. So under Section 4, what are the mechanisms to address bullying? According to Section 4 of RA 10627, what the school authorities would do, what the teacher should do, what the other students should do is, number one, to notify the law enforcement agency. If the school principal or the SIGME believes that the criminal charges under the revised penal code may be pursued against the perpetrator. Okay, so if there was a violation of the criminal code, for example, there was physical abuse. Let's say there was an altercation, and then there was a physical um, harm on the person who is subject of bullying, then the best remedy is to inform the law enforcement agency. Or the school authorities can take the appropriate disciplinary administrative action. So by that, the school authorities, after due notice and hearing, could impose administrative sanctions to the bullies. So either suspension and worse, expulsion from the school. Another mechanism to notify the parents or the guardians of the perpetrator. So this refers to the parents or the guardians of the bully. So you inform that this student is doing this and doing that. So what can we do? So that the parents or guardian would know and they can also impose some intervention on the student or their children. Okay, and then Another mechanism is to notify the parents or guardians of the victim regarding the action taken to prevent any further acts of bullying or retaliation. And of course, you have to notify the parents or guardians of the victim so that the appropriate interventions can also be done on the victim. If an incident of bullying or retaliation involves students from more than one school, the school first informed of the bullying or retaliation shall promptly notify the appropriate administrator of the other school so that both may take appropriate action. So if it involves two schools, then it will be a communication between the administrators of the schools. So if students from one school are bullying students from the other school or the other way around, it shall be addressed by the administrator so that the proper intervention programs can be done to both the students. The same law mandates confidentiality. Any information relating to the identity and personal circumstances of the number one bully, the victim, or the bystander shall be treated with utmost confidentiality. Any school personnel who commits a breach of confidentiality shall be subject to appropriate administrative disciplinary action in accordance with the existing rules and regulations of the Department of Education, the private school, without prejudice to any civil or criminal action that may be filed. Without prejudice to any criminal action, because if there is physical violence, that can be a source of physical injuries punished under the revised penal code. If there are verbal, social, gender-based bullying, that may be punishable under the law on libel, cyber libel, sexual harassment, or Safe Spaces Act. So they must be, aside from the administrative disciplinary action, civil and criminal action can be or may be filed if the victim would so choose. Okay. After knowing what bullying is and what are the mechanisms to be adopted by the school, we have to remember that the scope of this Anti-Bullying Act is only elementary and secondary schools. Elementary and secondary schools. Under the implementing rules of the law, it covers public and private kindergarten, elementary and secondary schools, and learning centers. So what if you are bullied? You are bullied. Can you ask for damages based on this Anti-Bullying Act? Can you file a case based on the Anti-Bullying Act? The answer is no. Republic Act number 10627 is not a source of criminal or civil liability. School heads, school personnel will be administratively liable for failure to comply with RA number 1067. Although RA 10627 is not a source of criminal or civil liability, the bully may be prosecuted under the revised penal code or special law. So again, the bully may be charged for physical injuries, for libel, for cyber libel, for violation of the Safe Spaces Act, or whatever crime that is committed based on the different kinds of acts of bullying. Okay? So that's it. That's for Anti-Bullying Act. You just remember this one, that the Anti-Bullying Act is just mandate on the part of the schools to adopt some policies to prevent bullying. And there are mechanisms there as proposed by the law to be observed by the schools to prevent bullying. And if not to prevent, to do the proper intervention whenever bullying has happened. This law is not a source of criminal or civil liability, but the bully may be prosecuted under the revised penal code or the special law which was violated by the bully. Okay, so that's it.
Hey, thank you so much, Attorney Russell S. Pernites. You really never have failed us even once sa mga talks mo dito sa SSU. SSU will be forever grateful sa inyo, Attorney Russell. All right, so Attorney Russell, is it okay if we go and move now to our open forum?
Yes, sure.
Okay. All right. So if anybody who would like to ask anything about the topic to Attorney Russell, you could just key that in on our Zoom chat box. Jeffrey, do you have anything to ask our speaker? Or maybe Jolia? You could unmute your microphone na lang. Okay, so let's have our first question here from one of our students in SSU. If hazing is an act resulting to psychological suffering, could we call it hazing if the action wasn't really physical but caused an effect on the psychological health of a person?
Okay. Not physical, but you have to go back to the definition of hazing, that act must be a prerequisite for you to become a member or for you to maintain membership in the organization. You go back to the definition. Is that act which might not be physical but something else? Is it required for you to be done for you to become a member, or while you are applying for membership in that organization, or for you to continue your membership? Because yes, the acts of hazing is not limited to physical. It includes any act which could be psychological that causes harm. But the qualification of the law is that that act must be a prerequisite for you to become a member of that organization. So if it falls under that definition, then it can be considered as hazing.
All right, attorney. Well, attorney, speaking of that, could you give us an example of an act which is not physical but has a psychological effect to somebody?
Okay, let's go to the let's go to the second paragraph of the definition. This one. Any activity intentionally made or otherwise, meaning intentional or unintentional, by one person alone or acting with others, that tends to humiliate or to embarrass, to degrade, to abuse, or endanger by requiring a recruit, neophyte, applicant, or member to do any menial, silly, or foolish task. This one. Even if there is no physical harm, but you are being subjected to any humiliation or embarrassment, which tend to degrade or abuse the recruit or the neophyte or the applicant, you are compelled to do some silly, foolish task that can be considered as hazing if that is part of the requirement for you to become a member. So I cannot cite a specific, because although I have in mind, I have something in mind, but I cannot cite a specific. Basta, I think you can imagine what are these acts which would cause humiliation or embarrassment, menial, silly, or foolish tasks. Take note that the definition is expanded. It's not limited to our usual nga na nahibawan about hazing, and there be paddling, there will be punching or kicking or any physical harm.
Okay, that is noted, attorney. Di ba po, attorney, meron nun yung mga CAT, ganon. May mga pinagagawang mga tasks na very menial, very, you know. So, could you consider those
Yes.
hazing?
Okay. Okay. Actually, those activities, I'll show the slides again, may be considered as an exception as defined by the law. Kaniha, this one. All forms of hazing shall be prohibited, but there are exceptions. The physical, mental, and practices to determine and enhance the physical, mental, and psychological fitness of prospective regular members of the AFP and the PNP, as approved by the Secretary of National Defense and National Police Commission, duly recommended by the Chief of Staff of the AFP, shall not be considered as hazing for the purpose of this act. And this exemption shall likewise apply to similar procedures and practices approved by the respective heads of other uniformed learning institutions, or the ROTC and the other, what's a term right now, CWTS. If there
Yes.
are physical activities, but the intention is to test the physical, mental, and psychological fitness, then that's not hazing. Because it's hazing only if that physical, mental, and psychological test is used as a prerequisite for you to become a member.
All
Okay?
right. Thank you so much, attorney. Very clear. Thank you so much for letting us go back to that slide. Medyo naliwanagan kami ngayon. All right. Next question, attorney. Are there still cases of hazing that you encounter in Cebu?
Actually, to be honest, we just learn, di ba, if there is already a victim. Because most of the time, the hazing, the initiation rites are being held in secret. So that's the problem there. That's why we have this law, we have a stricter law now, because whenever that activity is discovered, you should be aware and on alert that whenever that will be discovered, the penalty is high. Pero most of the time, yun, the activity will be discovered after someone dies. That's the problem there.
That's the sad reality on hazing.
Yes.
Kasi it's done secretly. Sino ba naman yung mag-hazing in public, di ba?
Yes, yes. You are
Yeah.
subjecting yourself to criminal prosecution.
Oh, all right, attorney, thank you. Another question. Let's go now to bullying. Um, could the Bullying Act be applied between a couple?
Okay. For couples, the Anti-Bullying Act will not be applicable. Okay. Again, I'll share again the slide because, the law limits the scope of the application by defining what is covered by the law. So here, under the Anti-Bullying Act, the law covers only students bullying another student, by one student or more students against one student or more student. So if it is between couples, so either physical abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, the proper law to invoke there is Republic Act number 9262, or the Violence Against Women and Their Children Act. So not this Anti-Bullying Act.
Okay, that is noted again, attorney. Another question here from one of our students. How do we file a complaint against a bully hiding under a dummy account?
Okay. Under a dummy account. That the under as discussed in the law, diba, the mechanism is for you to report it to the proper school authorities. So since that is a dummy account, I believe that you have to report lang. You have to report the account that it exists. it exists. You report it to the school authorities. At the same time, you also report that to the law enforcement authorities. You can go to the police station and have it lettered. And then the police station has a cybercrime division. That cybercrime division can investigate what is the IP address of that account, and maybe they have the mechanism also to identify where that person is located, where is the post made, and maybe they can help you identify who the real culprit is.
All right. Thank you so much, attorney. Well, I guess our students have questions here who are on board in Zoom. Do you want to say something, Jeffrey? Do you have any questions? You could unmute your microphone, or maybe Julia, ang ating top 2 students dito sa Zoom. Jeffrey or
Sige, hindi
Julia?
yan bullying, ha? Hindi yan bullying.
Hindi po yan bullying. Just make this clear. Wala pong bullying na gaganap. Tinatawag ko lang po talaga sila. Okay,
Nabubuli si Mama.
okay, baka hindi sila, hindi nila naririnig. Okay, are there questions po sa ating online? Okay, I guess wala po. Wala na po. Ay, Jolia, do you have any questions? Yes, you could unmute your microphone. Go ahead, Julia.
How is Gerald?
Ngayon ko lang na-gets yung joke ni attorney. Julia? Nandito po si Gerald. Okay, I guess mahina din yung internet connection ni Julia. How about you, Jeffrey? Ayan. Julia, if you cannot unmute your microphone, you could just type your question here in our Zoom chat box so we could read that for you na lang. How about you, Jeffrey? Do you have any question? Or maybe Crystal? Okay. So there is a question here from one of our facilitators, attorney. Attorney, how about if it's between a teacher and a student? Will we still go back to the definition of bullying na student to student lang talaga? I guess attorney Bernitas got disconnected. Let's just wait for him. And so if you have any more questions, you could just key that in our Zoom chat box. Attorney Raz, you're back. Okay, meron question dito from one of our facilitators, Stormy. She's asking if it's between a student and a teacher, will we still go back to the definition saying that's between student to student lang yung bullying?
Yes. You cannot invoke this law, but you can go to the school manual or the student manual or whatever source of, I think there is a university manual for that. So you can also check on the rules and regulations of the Civil Service Commission. You can even check Republic Act number 6713 on the code of conduct of public officials or public employees. So there are certain acts that should be followed by a public employee or a public official, or acts that should be observed. So these, if the professor or the instructor does certain either physical, verbal, psychological, or even cyber acts done through the internet, which could lead to or falls under any of the acts of bullying, it may not be under this law, but that professor instructor can still be held liable. And again, the liability is not limited to administrative. So dili lang siya administrative liability under the Civil Service Law, RA 6713, or the Code of Conduct of the school, but it may also be a criminal liability.
It's a criminal liability. Noted, noted, Attorney Raz. Well, I guess that's it for the questions. And thank you so much, Attorney Raz, for answering all the questions of our students. We are so much grateful because ang daming bonuses na nalaman namin from your answers during the open forum at kanina while you were talking about the topics. Okay, Attorney, we are so grateful to you for joining us once again for this orientation. And so allow us to give you again this certificate of recognition, which you really deserves. Which you really deserve. Okay, so let me share my screen here. And let me read the citation. And to present to you this certificate of recognition, we have on board the Vice President for the Student Affairs and Services, Engineer Maria Lourdes P. Amante, to express her gratitude to Attorney Raz Benitez. Engineer Maria Lourdes Amante.
Thank you. Samar State University, Catbalogan City, Philippines, Office of University President. Certificate of recognition is awarded to Attorney Rosel S. Pernetes in grateful recognition for imparting his valuable insights and expertise as a resource speaker during the orientation on RA 8049 Anti-Hazing Law and RA 10627 Anti-Bullying Act, held on April 21, 2021 at Summer State University. Event is 21st day of April 2021 at Summer State University, Catbalogan City, Zamar. Signed, Dr. Indy Cardoso, University President. Thank you so much, Attorney.
Thank you also.
Yay, thank you so much, Attorney Raz Benitez. Do you have any last statements you would like to say to our students?
Well, again, thank you. Thank you to all the students. Thank you thank you SSU and the SWDS for this opportunity. Again, remember what Ms. Jessa said earlier, ignorance of the law excuses no one. And I hope that you have learned something out of this activity. I hope that you observe, especially on the hazing part. If you are an organization, you are encouraged to do or to organize yourselves. But basta take note that you should be within the confines of the law. You can organize without need of doing hazing. You can organize. You can do activities without doing hazing. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Attorney Raz Benitez. Ang daming takeaways po namin dito sa Summer State University. And I'm sure our students have learned many, many things from you. And we are going to find them in our next, and we'll never forget them. All right, so that's it for this afternoon. But before we go, ladies and gentlemen, could I ask you to please open your cameras and let's take a picture just to keep this memory that we have today, that we were joined by Attorney Raz Benitez. Okay, could you open your cameras right now, everyone? Kahit gaano ka-dark yung place ninyo, that's okay. Naturalay na to. Yan. Smile, everybody. And on three, we are going to take a screenshot of our Zoom meeting. Okay, so I guess everybody's ready. In 3, 2, one. Smile, everyone. That's it for today. Thank you so much, everybody. And of course, to Engineer Maria Lourdes P. Amante, our Vice President for Student Affairs and Services, for the undying support on these activities that the Student Welfare and Development Services are holding. And thank you so much to our facilitators here in Somerset State University, specifically the Office of the Student Welfare and Development Center. We have here with us Sir Jacob and Ma'am Andrea here in our boardroom. So, kaway-kaway po kayo dyan. Thank you so much to our speaker, of course, to Attorney Russell S. Pernita. Sir, we know how busy you are, but you still gave your precious time for all of us to share your passion. Haamon. Okay, so
Pleasure.
that's it. Yes, yes, attorney. That's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm so glad to be with you this afternoon and Jessa, and see you again on the next webinars. Thank you, everyone, and God bless us all. Bye. Thank you, Attorney Raz.
Oh, thank you.